Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if it feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about how to ask for what you want in marriage. My guest, Frances, and her husband each had their own divorce attorneys. There was so much anger and hurt in their marriage, they were both done. But then she started a practice that not only stopped all the fighting, it also caused her husband to stop the divorce proceedings altogether. And now she says her marriage is so good, she wouldn't trade it for anything. And her husband says she inspires him to want to be his best self. They are both ridiculously happy, and she's going to tell us the steps she took to get her miracle so you can do them too. Then I'll be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which is from a trending news story about how to decide if you can trust your partner. I think you'll see why this conventional wisdom made me hopping mad. All that is coming up. But first, I'm going to share how to ask for what you want in marriage. And I'm also going to share what to do if you've tried what I'm about to show you and you didn't get the results you wanted. This is all about getting what you desire in your marriage, which is so important. The whole world depends on strong families. And that means we're all depending on strong marriages, which means it's important to feel that you're getting what you want in your marriage. Because life gets tedious when you're going day after day without ever feeling like you're getting what you want. It makes everything feel gray, and your husband can seem like a giant disappointment for not caring what you want. It's sad. It's lonely. And if you're anything like I was, you feel like you totally know what you desire, and your husband just isn't doing those things. But ironically, if your husband isn't doing the things that you desire, not knowing what you desire could actually be contributing to the problem. I'll explain that in a moment, but here are some of the symptoms you may be experiencing if you don't know what you desire. If you're feeling like you're always waiting for it to finally be your turn, but it never is, or if you're resentful that he just does what he wants without considering your needs, or that he never seems to have time to spend with you, or disappointed that birthdays, vacations, and holidays are such a letdown. If you're experiencing any of those feelings, then it's highly likely that you don't know what you desire or how to express it in a way that inspires him. Now, this one completely made my head explode because I thought that I knew what I desired. And I was telling my husband, and he just didn't care. But in retrospect, there were a few problems with my approach. One problem was that I thought I was expressing my desires when actually all I was doing is complaining. I would say, John, this kitchen is a disaster area. And I thought he would jump up off the couch and start cleaning the kitchen. But that never happened. Of course it didn't. He didn't know what I wanted. I have a theory that men can't even hear us when we complain. Like all he heard was, John, wah, 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 wah. And then one day I said, John, I would love a clean kitchen. He said, okay, I'll clean it. And he did. And that was over 20 years ago. And he's been cleaning it ever since. I don't even do the dishes around here. And I don't ever mention the dishes. He just does it because he knows it makes me happy. Did you catch that cheap phrase I used? All I said was, I would love, and the final outcome I wanted. I didn't say I wanted him to clean the kitchen. I didn't ask him to do it as in, would you please do the dishes? And I didn't say, I did the laundry and I mopped the floors. So how about if you do the dishes? I just said what I would love, just the final outcome. And my husband is wired to make me happy. So he seized his opportunity. Your husband is wired to make you happy too, even if it doesn't seem like it. I've asked thousands of men, how important is it to you that your wife is happy? And they all say the same thing. They say it's the most important thing. But he can't do that until you figure out what you desire and express it cleanly. No manipulation or control, because that will wreck it. You can even start by figuring out your complaints and then flipping them upside down. Your desire is in there. Every complaint is a lazy desire. In my case, I was complaining about the kitchen being messy. That was an easy one to flip. I wanted a clean kitchen. I also wanted my husband to make more money, but that wasn't a pure desire. That was about me trying to control him, and still really a complaint. You don't make enough money. What I wanted was relief from the stress of paying the bills. And when I said that, he took them over and started making more money too. I also wanted him to pay more attention to me and to be more affectionate, but those aren't pure desires either. Those are still complaints. You don't pay attention to me. You're not affectionate enough. I don't recommend using this phrase, I would love, and the final outcome, for time or his attention or his affection, because that feels lousy to have to ask for those things. I would rather attract his time and his attention and his affection. When I got happy and pleasable and respectful, his natural affection and attention for me came back. He couldn't get enough of me. So when you practice the 6 intimacy skills, that happens without you having to say anything. Just like our kitchen gets cleaned up without me saying a word, except for, thank you. I love this clean kitchen. Now, if you feel like you've tried expressing your desires in a way that inspires your husband by using this formula and it just isn't working, I want you to know that you're not alone. It can be tricky to express a pure desire without the rest of the connection framework. Sometimes a student will unwittingly try expressing a pure desire, but it's all about him spending time with her and it lands as a criticism and she doesn't know why he doesn't respond well. She doesn't know why he's just avoiding her and she thinks that the intimacy skills won't work for her. But really, there's some fine tuning that would make all the difference and she just needs the other 3 pillars of the connection framework. The first pillar is the 6 intimacy skills, but if you're like most women, you also need the second pillar, which is a community of like-minded women who are standing for your marriage, standing for your greatness. And you need the third pillar, which is a coach who has been where you are and made her marriage happy again. And you also need the fourth pillar, which is a way to pay forward what you've learned, because the best way to learn something is to teach it. Maybe you read about how to express your desires in a way that inspires in the book, The Empowered Wife, and you're wondering why it's not working for you. A lot of women have read my books, hundreds of thousands of women, but only a fraction of those women have had the opportunity to get the guidance from my coaches trained by me personally to make sure they get it right. You won't know what's possible and what's waiting for you in your marriage unless you gain those actionable insights that you can only get by spending time with our coaches and our community. In my experience, once you know what you desire and you can express it clearly and cleanly, it's pretty fun to see just what great lengths your husband will go to just to put a smile on your face. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest Frances and her husband each had their own divorce attorneys. There was so much anger and hurt in their marriage, they were both done. But then she started a practice that not only stopped all the fighting, it also caused her husband to stop the divorce proceedings altogether. Now she says her marriage is so good, She wouldn't trade it for anything. And her husband says she inspires him to want to be his best self. They are both ridiculously happy. And she's going to tell us the steps she took to get her miracle so you can do it too. Frances, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you, Laura. I feel it's a real privilege to be here.
Oh, well, it's great. Can't wait to hear your story. It sounds quite dramatic. So tell us about what things were like in the bad old days.
Oh, my goodness. So my husband and I had both been divorced before, and we both have a Christian faith. So it was not something that sat well with either of us, and it wasn't either of our choices that this happened. And so we met many years ago, and then we re-met after we had been apart from our spouses. And in the interim, my ex-husband had actually passed away as well. So I was completely on my own, but I had 3 teenage children. We got together kind of quickly. We've got a really cute story about how I met him in the supermarket and went to buy rock melons and met him and forgot to buy them. So that's wonderful. I walked out of the store and thought, he's quite cute. Anyway, which I hadn't noticed, but I'd met him years ago. Anyway, so we got together quite quickly and we got married, and within 2 weeks we were in marriage counselling because putting together a blended family without a lot of time in between is probably quite a tricky thing to do. And so the first issues that we had were really about his interactions with my children and my defending them. And in my mind, he could do nothing right. And in his mind, my kids could do nothing right. And so I was like the meat in the sandwich. And so we were fighting all the time. He said to me just the other day that he could almost set a clock by our arguments. And once my children had all moved out of home, because we've been married now for 12 years, once they had moved out of home, I thought, things would be much better, but they weren't. And we were fighting. He said he could set the clock for every 2 weeks. We would have a huge argument, and they would not be small ones. They would be ones where one of us was packing our bags and leaving. Yeah, so that was until we were packing them for the last time, and we both had divorce lawyers lined up, and we'd had initial conversations with divorce lawyers, and I thought we were done. And I was devastated because, as I said, we have a Christian faith, and I was ashamed to think that this was going to happen again, and I was ashamed of what my children would think of me. And I did not want us to divorce, not deep down, but I was so angry I didn't know what else to do about it. So
sounds exhausting. It's very stressful, lonely. And how long had you been living like this with all the fighting going on?
Well, we've been married 12 years, so it would have been going on for 10 years.
10 years, yeah. So by this time, you were probably exhausted.
Yeah, and it was really hard because the in-between times were really nice. So we settled back to something, that was really quite loving and nice, but not great, because you could feel the build-up coming to like that 2-week mark, and bang, something would make. It was usually me exploding, I have to admit, shamefully.
Well, authentically and accountably, which I appreciate so much, right? That was my story too. I was the exploder at my house. So you had these lawyers, and it looked pretty dark, and I appreciate you sharing about how shameful it felt too, because I remember also feeling that way. And so it sounds pretty hopeless at this point.
Yeah. So in the past, my husband hadn't sought divorce. He hadn't sought a lawyer, and he kind of just, I suppose he would kind of wait till the storm blew over, and I'd perhaps apologise, and then I'd demand an apology from him, and then we'd kind of tiptoe our way forward and kind of settle down. But there were often phases where he wouldn't talk to me for a week or 2 weeks. And so we had massive cold wars and no intimacy whatsoever. And then we kind of maybe settled down a bit. And the funny thing is, I've realised over the last 2 years where I've been following your program that what would often happen is I would get some self-care happening, and then I would feel better about myself. So then I would approach him, and then we would muddle our way through and we'd be okay for a while. So it's taken, a long time to recognise that this is what was happening. I might chat with girlfriends, and then I'd be like, oh, I feel quite happy towards him now. Maybe I'll reach out. And he was always willing when I would reach out, because he didn't really want us to end our marriage either. But this time I was scared because he had a lawyer and he said we were done. And I didn't know what I was going to do about it.
No. And your children were all out of the house at this point.
Yeah.
And does he have children as well?
Yeah, but they never actually lived with us. They lived with their mother. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, so what happened?
Okay, so it was very dramatic. So as I said, within 2 weeks, we'd had marriage counselling. And over the years, we'd sought different marriage counsellors, and we finally found one that seemed to be okay. But my husband stopped wanting to go. And I thought, so I started going by myself for a little while. Then I'd found this website. It was a Christian counselling type one that you could follow some of their programs for free online. So occasionally I'd listen to some of their stuff. And they kept saying that you had to work on your pies, which was your physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual attractiveness. And I understood the physical, I understood the intellectual, and I understood the spiritual, but I couldn't understand the emotional. I didn't know what they were talking about. And I'm thinking, is this the missing piece? And anyway, that night that he told me we were done, I went and slept in the spare room, which I'd been in for a few nights already. And up pops a podcast for this organisation saying they were going to talk about your emotional attractiveness. And I thought, oh, finally. So I started to, and I started to listen. And the first thing they said was, how you make other people feel. And I went, oh, I've been making him feel terrible. And I thought, oh, I don't know what to do about that. And then you would not believe it. I'm on my knees and I'm praying, God, please help, please help. And then I don't know where it popped up. I think it was on my Facebook feed, but up pops Laura Doyle. And I thought, oh, here we go, another thing that says, oh, we'll fix your marriage. We'll do this, we'll do that. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. I decided to listen, and you were telling your story. And I sat there and I went, oh, I've done everything that Laura did. Everything. I've tried to have my husband diagnosed with a mental illness. I've yelled at him. I've been disrespectful to him. Everything you could imagine. And I felt like, oh, this is what I need to do. And anyway, so I hear him get up in the morning. I was awake nearly all night. I hear him get up in the morning and I go to him straight away and kind of tentatively. And I said, you don't want a divorce, do you? And he burst into tears and said, no, I don't.
Aww.
And I said, neither do I. And I snuggled up to him on his knee and I straight away said to him, I am so sorry that I've treated you so disrespectfully and I didn't realise. And he said, thank you. And I said, I want to make changes. And he said, yes. And that was kind of the start of the journey. That was nearly 2 years ago now. And it's taken time, but it is truly a miracle where we're at now, an absolute miracle, because I started following your program. The first thing I did was I found your TV series on, I think it's on a streaming service here called Stan, and I started watching that. I go out every day with my headphones on and listen to a Laura Doyle podcast. I read your books, and then I got coaching as well. And just miraculous. Where we
Wow.
were and where we are now is miraculous.
I want to pause on this magical moment you're describing where you've been up all night and you have this awakening. It sounds like you got some insights about yourself and you became very humble and decided to be vulnerable and also accountable and apologize for being disrespectful to your, I mean, that's big. That's a huge, how did you do that? How did you find all that humility and courage?
I think the thing was because we'd been having counselling for a while, and for some reason, I don't know where it's come from, but I've always recognised the fact that it only takes one person to change a relationship, or it only takes one person to change any interaction. If somebody wants to have an argument with you, if you don't want to argue with them, you actually don't have to join in. And I've always known this. So I was always seeking, was there something in me that I needed to change? And I kept thinking, I can't think of anything. I'm kind to him. I do things for him. I love him. I'm this, I'm that. But he just irritates me. And he just won't do what I want him to do the way I want him to do it. And so I would get angry, frustrated and annoyed. And then just to realise and apply the skills that I've learned and to have the coaching to actually point out my blind spots, because I didn't realise how controlling I was. And to recognise that and to change that I think was like one of the biggest changes. Also, I'd been brought up in a family where, the wife pleases the husband and puts herself aside and all of this. And I was listening to a session that Coach Kathy was running one day, and she talked about the fact that nobody is responsible for our own happiness except for ourselves. And it was like the lights went on and I went, oh, I've been expecting him to make me happy. And if I went for a walk along the beach and he didn't want to come, I'd be angry at him because I expected that he would want to come with me. And I was controlling all the time. And then I realised that, hang on a minute, if I want to go for a walk, go for a walk. You can invite him if you want, but don't expect him to come. Don't expect him to make me happy. Go because you know that it will make you happy. And that was like a real release for me to not put that pressure on him, on me, or on our marriage, but to realise I am my own person and I can choose to do things to make myself happy. And guess what happens along the way? Because I stopped pressuring him, he actually started to want to come to do things with me. It's just, it flies in the face of everything that we kind of think, because often we're brought up as women to say that, it should be this way and this should happen and that should happen, and kind of flip it all on its head and go, hang on a minute, it doesn't have to happen that way. Just relax. Don't try and control it. He's a grown-up. He loves you and he wants to please you. And, it will happen if you stop trying to force it, because that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to force it to meet my expectations, and it doesn't work that way.
No. Well, I relate to you so much. So, all right. So you were definitely taking responsibility for your own happiness, right, Frances? And that was making a big difference. And how, well, first of all, what other kinds of things did you do differently than you had been doing?
Okay. So one of the things that you teach is to use the phrase ouch. And I really stumbled over that one, and I really found that one of the hardest things to do. And so I'm a teacher, and so I said to my coach, I said, I'm going to try it out on my students first. I said, because this is not sitting well. So I would go to school, and the kids, I teach classes that are practical. So the kids are often chatting to me and walking around and things, and sometimes they're a bit cheeky, and they're absolutely gorgeous and teenagers, and so that can be a bit of fun. Anyway, so the first day I did this, one of the students said something to me that was a bit cheeky, and I thought, oh, here's my opportunity. I said, ouch. And he looked at me and went, oh, sorry, miss. I thought, oh, this is fun. So then I was trying it out just for a bit of fun. Anyway, then I tried it with my husband. And the first time I did it, he looks at me and he goes, ouch, are you serious? And I went, yeah, that actually hurt. And he went, oh, I'm so sorry. And I thought, wow, in the past I would have said to him, you did this and you did that, and why did you do this and why did you do that? And he'd be angry and defensive and defending himself, and then I'd be yelling at him and saying, you need to say sorry to me. Why won't you apologise? And he'd say, because I didn't mean to do it. Why should I say sorry? And it'd go round and round in circles. So now I just say, and I use it a lot. Just the other night he said something, and then it's not very often that I need to use it now, but just the other night he said something and it was just a little bit, and I said to him, ouch, just quietly, and he said, oh, really? I said, I know you didn't mean it, but it was a little ouch. And he went, oh, really sorry. And I thought, no, so much peace now. I don't have to fight to defend myself, and he doesn't have to fight to defend himself. And it is so peaceful and so relaxed and calm now compared to what it was. And we've both said, isn't this nice now? We don't fight anymore. Because we don't. I can't remember the last time we had an argument.
Really? How long has it been then, would you guess? I mean,
probably a year.
Really?
Yeah.
A year?
Yeah.
That's a long time. That is a lot of peace. That is a much shorter conversation you're describing than what was happening before. So this probably felt like a superpower.
Oh, it does. And I had lots of coaching. So I had some coaching and then I stopped and decided to implement the skills for a while. And then COVID, and we've had lots of lockdowns in our city. And I could see that things were slipping a bit and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. So I signed up for some more coaching. And what I said to her was, one of the things that I found so helpful is I know that I'm not perfect in using the skills and I will make mistakes, because I know it's up to me to really self-assess and work out, okay, things have gone down south a little bit here. Mm-hmm. What's happening? What am I doing? What do I need to use here that will help to change things up again? And sometimes I choose the wrong skill or I say the wrong thing at the wrong time. But the thing that I said to the coach that I love and that has really made such a change is that if I make a mistake, I know how to fix it. I know how to get back to peace, whereas before I had absolutely no idea. And so now we have so much peace. I can also recognise as well, if the atmosphere is not so great, I can look over things that are going on and I can actually work out, is it something that's on my paper or is there actually something going on with my husband that's on his paper that's none of my business? And I can sit back and I can assess that and go, hang on a minute, I've done nothing. I can honestly say there is nothing on my paper that is causing him to be upset. So I just leave him to get on with what he's doing. I'll do my own self-care. I'll just express gratitude to him and tell him how much I love him. I don't tell him what to do. I don't advise him. I just leave him to get on with it. And later on, he'll come to me and say something like, oh, sorry, I was just a little bit upset because I'd had a client who'd done this or something else was going on, and da-da-da-da-da, and we're good. And I'm like, yay, because I would have jumped all over his paper in the past and tried to fix it.
What would you have said to him in the past?
Oh, I would have said to him, are you okay, honey? What's going on? Are we okay? Is there something? Have I done something to upset you? Are you angry with me? Is this, and then that would make him more on edge because he would basically feel like he couldn't just be. Yeah. And now he can just be. And so we have this safe place that he can come and actually tell me how he's feeling without me asking and without me digging and trying to fix things and control how he's feeling. I don't have to control it. I can just trust him and love him and be that safe place for him. And I am now that safe place, and he knows that I am. And so therefore he does come to me, and he does talk to me, and he does tell me how he's feeling, and we work through things together.
What a great example of choosing your faith over your fear, right? You can see he's irritated or something, he's in a mood, and you just decide like, well, this is going to be fine. He's a capable man, and I think I'll just go do something I enjoy, and he's able to work it out. So it's tremendous. So he called off the divorce pretty much straight away. It sounds like as soon as there was really no hesitation on his part. He's a softie. He was just hoping this was going to happen. Everything that you brought, it sounds like. Okay. Yep. And so this 2-year journey, it's been largely your own, it sounds like, your own process.
Yeah. And I think at first he was a bit nervous, thinking, is this going to stick? And so we had, some issues at first where he would throw out a lot of bait. And it took me a long time, with help with my coach, to work through how to manage bait and how not to rise to the bait and how to recognise bait, which has actually been really helpful, not just in my marriage, but in most relationships that I have. And I'm realising that, I don't have to take the bait. And I actually advise girlfriends, and I say to them, you don't have to go to every argument that you're invited to. You don't have to take the bait. And it took me a long time to I kept puzzling with my coach and saying, why does someone who professes to love you throw out bait? And then I realised I used to do that myself. And I had to work through, why did I do it? And the reasons I did it was because I wanted either attention, or I wanted to know that no matter how bad I got, that person would still love me. And I realised that that's often why other people do it as well. They might feel insecure, or they're just testing the waters. And when I got my head around that helped me to recognise, when my husband was throwing out bait, that it wasn't actually usually about me. It was usually something else that was going on in him. So once again, on his paper. And I didn't have to respond to it. And guess what? He doesn't do it anymore.
You're kidding. Okay, do you have an example? I would love to hear what this looked like at your house. What kinds of bait did he throw out before?
Okay, one of the big ones was, and it happened just over a year ago, and it was really significant because we were on holidays in a lovely beach town that we go to regularly. And what had happened was, we'd been in lockdown for a long time, and we came out of lockdown, and I had actually said to him, I've booked a few days to go away to this town because it's the end of the years and I'm on school holidays, and you're more than welcome to come, but I need to go because I'd been teaching online and it had been really, really tough year, and I just needed a few days to go away. Well, unbeknownst to me, he had taken it on board that I was angry and I was going no matter what. And so he came along, but he had this attitude about him that I didn't realise was really playing on his mind. And so we were walking along the beach this day, and he was chatting to me about something just normal, and I noticed something. I can't remember whether it was in the water or whatever it was, and he flew off the handle at me and said, you don't listen to me, and I was talking, and why are you interrupting me? And I was devastated, and he stormed off, and I didn't know what was going on. And I actually had a call scheduled for that day with my coach. So we worked through some things, and I ended up sitting on that beach crying my eyes out. And he said to me he was going to go home, and he was going to leave me there, and he was going to take the car. And I'm like, so huge bait. This was huge. And I talked through with my coach, and I slept on the couch that night. And I get up the next morning and I thought, what do I want and how do I feel? I don't want you to take the car. And so I'll drive you home if you really need to go, because I thought I'm not going to control this. But if he wants to go, he can go. And he's like, well, that's ridiculous. And, da, da, da. And I ended up he said to me, well, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to stay. He goes, oh, but I'm spoiling the holiday. I said, I want you to stay and I want you to sort yourself out. So I was a bit controlling, and I realised that. But I didn't realise I'd taken the bait, whereas I would have handled it much differently now. If he'd said that, I just would have said something like, I love you, honey, and just kept walking. I wouldn't have I wouldn't have accepted the invitation to the argument. So this year we went to the same town at the same time of year, and I sent an email to my coach and I said, just so you know, 12 months after what happened last year, I am now sitting on exactly the same beach, and I'm sitting here feeling loved and adored and happier than I've ever been on exactly the same beach, because we've been through a whole year of me practicing the skills and learning and choosing and selecting. And now, even if I did interrupt my husband now, it would never end up in that mess that it ended up in a year ago, because I don't take the bait. I've learned to say ouch. I've learned to express my desires in a way that inspires. And I've learned how to apply the skills so that we're both in a really happy place. And a funny story, and this was me being a bit cheeky with him. I've had a sore leg, a bit of an injury, and so we'd arrived at our accommodation and we had to go upstairs with our luggage, but there's a lift. And we arrived and my husband said, I really don't want to get the luggage out yet. And I said, okay, I hear you. I want to go for a walk on the beach. He goes, yeah, fair enough. I said, oh, and I would love it if you unpack the car without me, jokingly. And he goes, I would love it if you helped me. And I said, yeah, I understand. I said, I get that. I said, but I know how much you want to please me. He goes, yes, I do. And I laughed and I said, okay, I'll see you when I get back. So when I get back, I walk in the door and I saw one of the bags in the room already. And he comes out the bedroom and I said, did you unpack the car? He goes, yes. I said, all of it? He goes, yes. And I threw my arms around him and I hugged him and I said, oh, I love you. I said, you're just gorgeous. You're so gorgeous. And we just laughed. Yeah.
I love that story. So you had no expectations. You were surprised that he even did.
I was. I was truly surprised.
But you spoke into him. I heard it like a spouse-fulfilling prophecy as well. I know how much you want to please me. And he agreed with you. Yes, I do. And he decided to be your hero. So sweet.
Yeah. And I do call him that. I tell him that you're my hero because he is. And I tell him that he's my favourite human because he is. You know, and I often look back and I think, oh, how stupid were you? You were going to toss him aside. How ridiculous.
How
and
tragic it would have been.
Oh, completely. Somebody else might have got him.
Right. That's probably true. And somebody else would have her bags all unpacked for her.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. So, would you say making these changes came naturally for you?
Not at first. Definitely not at first. Apologising for disrespect in the first time that I did it, that was very natural. But when an issue comes up again and I think, I have to apologise, I grit my teeth, and it takes me a little while to actually be able to do that because it doesn't always come naturally. It flies against, I suppose, my very independent nature and having to admit I'm wrong. But I think it's really important to be accountable because you can't go through life expecting other people to pick up where you made the mistake. If you can be accountable and fix it as quickly as possible, then life goes a lot more smoothly, not just in your marriage, but in every aspect of your life. There's no point trying to shove it under the carpet because it'll come up again anyway. Yeah.
So you sound like a very different woman than the one who had the divorce attorney lined up consultation. How are you different?
I don't see everything as being my husband being against me. So every time he would say something, I would always see it as a negative. And for example, while we were away at this town recently, there was a step that we had to step down, and it was the same colour as the pavement. And my husband, being the caring person he is, he said to me, watch the step. Now, in the past, because I am a very independent person, I know how to look after myself. I don't need you to tell me what to do. In the past, I would have said to him, what, do you think I'm stupid? I can't see a step. I can't get down a step myself. Now, I turn to him this time because I've realised that that's him showing how much he cares. Mm-hmm. So I actually said that to him. I said, thank you. I said, I know that you showing me you care. And I think I might have even said to him in the past, I would have thought you were treating me like an idiot, but I know that's not what you mean. So I had to deliberately choose to put on different perspectives. And one way I did that was I would write down 10 things I was doing, and I still do it actually, 10 things a day that I appreciate about my husband. And it might range from anything at all. That might be taking the bins out, or it might be how tall and how handsome he is, how generous and kind he is. But I had to do it as a deliberate act, because when things started sort of going downhill a little bit during lockdown 12 months ago, that was the first thing I started to do, because every single time I was having a bit of a tricky moment, I would Google Laura Doyle, husband, da-da-da, or Laura Doyle, self-care, or Laura Doyle, appreciation, or something. I would type in words and something would come up. I've listened to at least 100 podcasts, but I would specifically put in what I needed, and something would come up. And I go, okay, all right, so this time things weren't going so good, and I recognised that I needed extra self-care to get myself happy, and I needed to put on different perspectives by writing a list of appreciation. So I started doing that, and I still do that, as I said, every day in my journal, because I love to journal. That's one of my self-care acts. And I will do some things about what the day ahead was, or what the day behind was, and 10 things I appreciate about my husband. Mm-hmm. And it's completely changed how I see things, and it helps me to look for evidence of the things that I believe to be true about my husband. And I'll often put those down as a win in my journal. Say, yep, I can see this about my husband, and this is what he did, and this is how much I love him and value him for what he did. And it's changed my perspective completely. And in the early days, I looked at applying the skills as learning a new language, and it's the language of male. Yeah. And I realised that if you're in a relationship and you both speak a different language, it's never going to achieve anything. But if even just one of you learns to either speak it or understand it, then you can have communication and you can have success. So I was determined to learn the new language. And because I have learnt it, we can both communicate now. Whereas I didn't realise how I spoke to him in the past was causing him to be defensive and to close up and to not be able to respond in a way that I understood either. But now we understand and we can communicate. That's great.
It's beautiful. I'm really impressed with your discipline about your daily gratitude list. That's magical. And it sounds like I call it the drop and do 10, right? Whenever you're having this emotional turmoil, you do your 10 gratitudes. And it sounds like you just take it for granted. That's something you wouldn't want to miss doing every day. And you talk about how much it's changed your perspective, your perspectives. And now I wonder, has your husband also changed?
Yes. And he said to me, he can see how much I've changed. And he has said that, that makes him want to be a better person for me as well. And yeah, he's definitely changed. And that's what's, so amazing from where we were even a year ago, like I said, on the beach, and I was crying, to where we are now. It's just miraculous. But I think the important thing to note is it does take time. It doesn't happen straight away, because I created a toxic place and now we have a safe place. And that doesn't happen overnight, because my husband had to build trust and faith in what I was implementing and believing that this was going to stick, that I wasn't going to turn back to the wicked witch of the West, that I was going to, keep doing what I'd learned. And I am committed to do this for the rest of my life, because I can see the skills working, not just, as I've said, in my marriage, but in my relationship with my children, with my mother, with friends, with my staff, with colleagues. And yeah, and it does. It makes a difference. Yeah, and my students.
Yes. So was there ever a point where you thought, oh, I don't know if I can keep this up? This is too hard.
No, I don't believe there was ever a point that I got to. I got a bit scared in the lockdown, but that was when I went back into coaching, because I could see that things were heading downhill. And because we've been through such a difficult time with circumstances beyond our control, I thought, no, I don't want these skills to slip. Because I journal every day, I could see, even in my journaling, that things were slipping. And I didn't want that to happen, because I knew that the skills were working and I didn't want to let them go. So I actually decided, to take a positive step towards making sure that they were really embedded in me, because I can see that they're really, really worthwhile and really worth learning. And I just wish that everybody could learn them as they're growing up and apply them throughout their life. And it's interesting, because of the marriage counselling we'd had, and we'd had many different ones, there was like one thing that you could take from each counsellor, but it's like that was worthwhile. So one of them did tell me to write down 10 things about your husband, but never actually, why to do it or how to do it or what it will do if I do that. So I did it once or twice and thought, I can't think of anything I like about him at the moment, so I'm not writing anything down. So, but I can see over these 10 years of difficulty that the different counsellors we had, they might have had one thing, each one, that you could implement, and the rest was just like ridiculous. And then you've pulled it all together to make it something that is doable and works and creates miraculous change. And yeah, so yeah, I don't think I ever thought it was too hard. Just the having to apologise sometimes is hard, but
that's right.
I knew it was worthwhile.
Right.
I knew it was worthwhile.
Sometimes I don't want to do it either. So I love hearing how successful you have felt. It sounds like different. I mean, success is a vitamin. I forget who said that. It wasn't me, but I love it, because in order to keep going, we all need to feel that we are successful. And you were seeing evidence of that right from the go. It sounds like, yeah. So what is your marriage like now?
It is peaceful, and it's caring, and there's laughter, and there's fun, and there's joy. We'll sit down and we'll watch a movie together, and sometimes I'll say to my husband, I want to watch this movie, and he will actually say, okay, whereas in the past I failed at actually telling him what I wanted. And so he didn't actually know how to please me, because I didn't know how to tell him. So, and that's been a very big learning for me, because coming from the background of the wife pleases the husband, and swapping that around and realising I actually took away some of his masculinity by not allowing him to please me because I thought I had to please him. So, he works hard to please me. I love to please him because that came very naturally. But learning how to do that in a way he can receive is the same as him learning how to do it for a way that I can receive. So, I'll tell him what I want. So we go out for dinner. He supports me, and he always did, but I could never see him how he was doing this. But he supports me in anything at all that I want to do, anything. And like I said, I couldn't see that he was doing that before because perhaps I wasn't listening, or I didn't have on different perspectives, or I didn't value what he was doing. I might have thought he had an ulterior motive or something like that. So because I've studied different courses and things over our time together, and perhaps I thought, he wants me to do that, so I'll make more money or something. I don't know. I had really weird perspectives on it. But now I can see that he supports me in any choices I make or anything I want to do. He's kind and caring, and I respond very well to that as well. Like if I need to step down the step, instead of snapping back at him when he tells me to watch the step, I say thank you. I have a little laugh on the inside because I think, oh my goodness, what a difference that is.
Yes.
And we went on a cruise on a river recently. It was my niece's 18th birthday, and she wanted to go on a river cruise, so the family all went, and it was absolutely lovely. But we just sat there the whole time and just enjoyed each other's company. He had his arm around me the whole time. We just chatted, and it was beautiful. We both said, we want to do this again. And, so
wow.
Very, very different. Very different.
Love it.
I recently bought an inflatable kayak, and this is kind of funny. And it's a bit too heavy for me to set up, and it's got 2 seats in it. And I didn't buy it thinking, you must come with me. But I said to him, I would really love you to come with me, have a go in this kayak. And I didn't know how to set it up. In the past, if he really didn't want to do something, he would get quite angry when he was setting something up and frustrated and annoyed. And I'd think, this wasn't worth it. And he set up the kayak for me, came kayaking with me. He didn't get upset once, didn't get annoyed once. We had a wonderful time. It's totally, totally different. Yeah.
He does it with a smile instead of the grumbling. And he's proud to be your hero at the end of it. He gave you a good time.
He did, and that was really important in the second lot of coaching I had. I remember we had an argument. Actually, I can tell you when it was. It was not a whole year ago. It would have been in about March this last year, 2021, because we went away for a weekend and we ended up having an argument because I tried to control something. But I didn't realise I had until the coach she was chatting to me and she was just kind of asking me questions and and I suddenly went, I was controlling, wasn't I? And she went, blind spot there. I think you've got to, we'll work through this blind spot. And I could not see it for the life of me. But now I can actually sit back if I sense a bit of tenseness between us, and I can go, you tried to be controlling again, let it go. And I actually did something with my kids the other day, and I was really upset with myself because it was just by text message. And 2 of my children came back and they sounded grumpy in the text messages. And I said to my husband, I tried to control them. He goes, well, at least you've learnt. And I went, yes, that's true. I had. And I recognised it. But I was annoyed that I'd done it because it's so easy to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It is. But I do recognise it now. I can see those blind spots. And I'm sure there's still some more because this is not an end. This is a lifelong process.
Yeah.
And
like exercise or something, right? We're just you just learn to love it, and then you keep doing it. And there's definitely moments of joy in it for sure. So how has this impacted your children? I know they're grown and out of the house.
Yeah.
And his are as well. Has there been, maybe it hasn't, is there any impact on?
There definitely has been. 12 months ago, we were coming up to Christmas, and one of my sons wanted to have Christmas at his house, and the other one wanted to get us all together Christmas the day before because he couldn't come on Christmas Day. And at that time, there'd been a few niggly upsets between my children and my husband. And I was really encouraged by my coach to use an occasion fulfilling prophecy. And I found that really a little bit hard because I was thinking, I don't know if that sits well with me. And I was chatting to a friend of mine, and she encouraged me because there's a verse in the Bible that talks about that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. And I thought, I get this. I can believe for this to happen. So I talked through developing what I wanted to see happen, and I started saying to my husband and writing it in my journal and saying it whenever I could, that we are going to have a great time on Christmas, and we are going to have a great time Christmas Eve. And my mum, there'd been an issue with my mum as well. My mum is going to be great. My son is going to be great. My other son is going to be great, and we are going to have a fantastic time. We had the best Christmas. The absolute best Christmas. And this Christmas again, it's always a little bit tense. There's always a few family issues around Christmas. I just kept saying once again, we're going to have a great day. We're going to have a great day. And we did. Had an absolutely fantastic day. And I actually use that with my students at school as well, because I take a homeroom of a morning and I say to the students every day, today is a great day. And they often tease me and say, is that because the cafe's open, miss? Because we have a student-run cafe. And I go, no, it's not because I'm getting coffee. Today is a great day. And we claim it. Yeah. But that Christmas one, that really opened my eyes and really, really helped, because if I feel that there's something happening that I need to really believe for change in, I claim it and I'll write it in my journal. And when there's opportunity to say things out loud, I say it out loud as well. And I have seen some really major changes. That Christmas one was like, seriously, my husband wasn't even going to come for Christmas. But I used the, what do I want, how do I feel? And I just said to him, I hear you. I understand how you're feeling. I would really like us all to be together. And I just left it. And he came, and I kept saying to him, it will be great. My mum will be lovely. My sons will be lovely. And the funny thing was, I sat there at the table on the Christmas Eve one, and my oldest son, him and my husband had a bit of an issue prior to Christmas, going back about a month. And I watched my oldest son reach out to my husband to draw him into the conversation and stuff. And yeah, and I just left it. I decided not wife lessons, it's life lessons. So I left it all alone. And we had this barbecue. It was in a park, and there was a basketball court, and I went off and played basketball with my daughter for a while. I came back and they were all chatting. They're all having a nice time. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. And
you are a prophet.
I said to my husband afterwards, did you have a nice time? He goes, yeah, it was great. He said, they were really great. And I said, yep, and tomorrow's going to be great as well. And he's like, oh, I'm still a little bit nervous about that. I said, no, we're going to have a great time. And we did. I had an absolutely fabulous time.
Love it.
So
I love it. I love it. So for a woman who's listening now, who maybe she has a divorce attorney and he has a divorce attorney, it's been filed, and she wants the kind of marriage where her husband gets all the luggage out and unpacks it for them, and where he turns up on Christmas Day, even though he says he doesn't want to, because he wants to make her happy, and where they just enjoy each other's company, as you're describing. What is your tip for her? How can she get from where you were to where you are now?
I think one of the most important things, and I read this really recently, was to always recognize that there is never a point in an interaction or a relationship that you don't have some input, or you don't have had done something. But sometimes it's quite difficult to recognize. So working through that accountability, I think, is a major game changer. Being able to say, I'm not perfect, and perhaps everything that I've learned in my life from my family growing up and the things I've witnessed in my family that I've thought is how to behave is not always right. And it may not always be right for your relationship. So if things have really spiraled downwards, being able to step back and recognize what's on my paper and that I can only show up as my best self and I can only learn to change me, and that I have no control over anybody else but only me, and that by changing me changes the dynamic completely in your life. Because if you show up and you're angry, people around you will automatically be tense. But if you show up soft and vulnerable, people will respond to you differently. And you can see it in how we watched a movie just the other night, and one person asked someone to do something for them angrily, and then another person came along and asked the same person to do the same thing but came along soft, and they did it for the person who came along soft but was looking daggers at the person who came along angrily. And we can see that even when we deal with people, say, in a restaurant or a shop, if we get angry about something, then it goes down south. But if we can stay soft and kind but still say what we need, people will respond to you differently, and it's no different in your marriage. So being able to sit back and be accountable, but also learning what respect means to a man, because respect for a man is completely different to what we've often been brought up to think that respect is. And I really enjoyed learning a lot about what respect means to a man through your podcasts and through coaching and through your books, because that just opens your eyes to a whole new way of speaking and a whole new way of acting and reacting and being accountable for where you have got it wrong. Because, I think it's just really important to really, really understand that you can only change you. But when you change you, things around you change. And they change for the better. Yeah.
They do. I love that. And you certainly have incredible accountability. I can hear it all over you and in your story. And I admire that very much. But what about for a woman who says, yes, but, I can be accountable all I want, but he has this mental illness or he drinks too much. He's an alcoholic. They've really got something where they could say, look, I can't make him change. How will this make any difference
No, you can't make him change. You can only make you change. And as I said, when you change, things around you change as well. So by learning the skills, they can be used for every circumstance and situation. I tried to have my husband diagnosed with a mental illness. I even told him he had a mental illness. Well, guess what? He doesn't have that anymore. Or does he? Hang on. I don't know, because I really don't care whether he does or not. Not meaning that in a nasty way, but meaning it in a way that it doesn't impact our relationship, even if he does have a mental illness. He has admitted that he goes through times where has anxiety or perhaps even some depression, but I don't now try and fix him. I love him through times when he's a bit down. I love him through them. And if he comes to me and wants to talk about it, I listen to him. If he asks me for what I think, I will sometimes say something if I have something really relevant to say, but I don't just jump in and take over and try and tell him how to be or what to do. My husband, I felt, also did have a problem with alcohol in our earlier days, but I stopped focusing on that. And I think it's a lot about what you teach, Laura, about not focusing on the things you don't want, but focusing on the things you do want. So instead of saying you drink too much or you've got a mental illness, that's what our whole problem is, focusing on the really good things in him. And the gratitudes that I've been doing every day has made a big difference, because I see him different and he steps up to meet what I see in him. And as he said to me in the past, he wants to be a better person because of the changes that I've made. And so he is. I wouldn't say he's a better person. He was always a good person. But now it shows more and I look for it more and I see it more. And I'll say to him, I will thank him for everything he does for me. Whereas in the past, I had this stubbornness in me. Well, he doesn't thank me for everything. Why should I thank him for everything? Mm-hmm. But it's once again about speaking that language of husband. It's like they need it. And I've got a friend who's quite elderly, and she, when I was first going through the skills and I talked to her about them, she said to me, you already know you do good stuff. Why do you need him to say that? You're bigger than that. You're better than that. And is it going to damage you or hurt you at all to say thank you to him and appreciate him? And I thought about that and I thought, no, I'm not giving anything away by doing that. What does it matter if I do it? So I think one of the first things I thanked him for was hanging out the washing or doing the washing. I didn't do the washing then for 6 months. I didn't touch it. He did it every single time it needed doing. And it was like, whoa. Yeah, but now, and at first I probably thanked him just because I thought I had to get this thing happening. Now I do it very authentically because I do really value and appreciate him. And I think some people, when you first come into the skills, might think, oh, this is just a new way to try and manipulate things to get your own way.
Yeah.
Not at all. I would never, and I'm always try to be accountable for that I would not manipulate my husband to do something for me because, number one, that feels really bad because he's not doing it out of any authentic want to do it, and I'm not doing it authentically either. So it's not about manipulation. And, yeah, so the mental illness or the alcoholism, yeah, they're real problems, but focusing on them doesn't fix them, and you can't fix them anyway. You can only ever work on yourself and show up as your best self. And I would think also using spouse-fulfilling prophecies would really, really have a place in those situations as well, But I'm looking for the good when he's not depressed, saying, "Oh, it feels so much fun to be with," or "Oh, I'm so happy you don't go out and get drunk every night." Just looking for those things and taking the opportunities because I've done all that and they work. I think it's really about making another human being feel valued, and when you make them feel valued, they make you feel valued as well.
Learning to love and be loved in return.
Yes.
So what would you say to yourself if you could time travel? Knowing what you know now, what would you tell Frances from before?
Stop being so grumpy. I was incredibly grumpy. And stop seeing bad everywhere. Look for the good because there's so much good there. And you don't have to control everything. Let go. Faith over fear. Let go. Because when you're trying to control everything, you hold everything so tight within you that there's no room for change, and there's no room to be soft, and there's no room for your husband or other people to let their love in because you're trying to control it and you're filled with fear. Because I've learned that when somebody's trying to control something, there's an underlying fear. I've just learned so much. And there's so much I wish I had known in the past. And like I said, with my students I have in homeroom, I actually do try and just gently weave some of these skills in there because I think if I had learnt them, even as a teenager, even as a little bit, and learnt to implement them, I would never have gone through some of the things in my life that I've gone through to take to, get to my age now, which is, I've got adult children, so I'm not young, to realise, that even in my kids, how I interact with them and try not to control them anymore. Makes a huge difference. And I wish I'd learned that when they were younger as well. So,
yeah, I hear you. I had a lot of sadness and disappointment that I didn't learn the skills earlier also. And I think, like you, I just feel so grateful that I have them now. It's so nice to find them when I found them. And you are such a wonderful example of what's possible. You're very inspiring, Frances. I want to just congratulate you on this incredible accomplishment. So not only are you not going through a second divorce and feeling the shame that you were describing earlier that would come along with that, but this really is a victory lap. This is you celebrating this tremendous accomplishment, right? It's just gratifying and exciting and certainly inspiring to hear all that you've done in your family. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you do, Laura, because without you putting it all together in the way that you have, and the programs and books and podcasts and the television show, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I'm so grateful.
Well, I'm glad we found each other. Frances, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that has me pulling my hair out this week is from a trending news story called "The 5 Biggest Red Flags That a Friend or Partner Can't Be Trusted, According to Psychotherapists." And biggest red flag number 1 is that they tend to change the details of a single story, depending on the circumstances. If you notice that someone is offering you conflicting information or seemingly bending the truth of a story, those are signals that point to untrustworthiness. So right from the title of this article, I started to gag because the premise of this is that you should know the signs and be vigilant looking for them so that you know if your partner or your friend is untrustworthy right away. And then through this vigilance of always looking for the dishonesty, you can protect yourself. Then you'll be safe. Only that's not my experience. My experience is that it matters what I seek because I find what I seek. If I'm looking for dishonesty and untrustworthiness, that's what I find. If I'm looking for honesty and trustworthiness, that's what I find. If I lead with my fear that I'll be lied to or betrayed, I find all kinds of evidence that that's what's happening, all right. But if I lead with my faith that I'll be safe and supported, I find so much evidence of that. People respond to me so much better when I'm expecting the best from them, not the worst. But this first red flag about storylines changing also reminded me of when my husband used to secretly sneak out to get donuts almost every day. I had no idea, and that's because I was all judgy about his donuts, and he knew that. So instead of listening to me shriek about how bad donuts are, he just snuck out to get them. And later I learned that the donut shop crew knew him by sight, knew his name, knew what kind of donuts he liked, and worried that something was wrong if he didn't stop by. All of this happened without me knowing because I wasn't safe to share that part of his day with? What rational person would want to share that with someone who's so controlling and critical? Sometimes storylines changed slightly to camouflage his trips to Love and Donuts, which I learned all about when I restored the emotional safety at my house by accepting my husband's choices for his life instead of insisting that he do what I thought was best. And as soon as it was safe for him, my husband was honest about his donut dalliances. I remember a student who felt incredibly betrayed when her husband quit smoking after she'd been after him about it for years and then secretly started again behind her back. She caught him red-handed in the backyard with a cigarette in his hand and one in the ashtray when she came home unexpectedly. It was evidence that he was a liar, she told me. Or was it evidence that he didn't feel accepted when he decided to smoke, and that it was less trouble to hide his smoking from her than it was to deal with her nagging or criticism about it? These days, when I find out that someone I love is hiding something, I ask myself if I've been critical or condemning, and therefore they didn't feel safe to share with me. And usually I have to admit, well, that's exactly what happened, which doesn't feel so great. I still get that feeling when I realize I've been on someone else's paper like that. But by self-examining, I can usually get myself to the place of wanting to apologize and to let them know that I trust them as the expert on their lives. And I acknowledge that I know only a little. That does wonders for restoring the connection between us. For that reason, the advice that you should look out for red flags that your partner is untrustworthy and that changing the details of a single story is a big red flag that your partner is untrustworthy is the very, very worst relationship advice I've heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll be talking about how to accomplish more by doing less. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that my new dish towel reads, "Alexa, clean the kitchen." So we're waiting for that to happen.